Because of course, when we talk about sustainable for farming or fishing, it is about how quickly can things grow back. And when it comes to minerals and metals, you take them out of the ground and they're not going to come back. That we know. And so sustainable here becomes more a term that refers to the industry, the overall industry. How can the industry become sustainable? And there's several things that you have to do to become sustainable, but it's very important that we keep the raw materials that we do dig out of the ground, that we keep them in the material loop for as long as possible, so that we use them for as long as we can, and that we also get better at reusing them. But we shouldn't lose sight of, and I think this is very important, we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that we must get things into the material loop. There's a lot of people out there that say, oh yeah, we no longer need mining, we just need recycling, but that's not the case, because we actually have growing demand for many metals. We have especially growing demand for metals that we did not use some years ago, because it's new technologies, green technologies, high-tech technologies. So we do need to dig them out of the ground, but we should be much, much better at how we design the products that we use so that we can recycle them as well. So that's one side of sustainability, and the other side is then getting them out of the ground in the best possible way, where we are treating the environment, the people, the social effects with great respect and great care, and develop the best practices that we can. And I think that's very important to explain that to the general public, that this is not it's not really so much a for and against thing. It's a little bit like farming. If you want to eat, you have to grow vegetables. If you want to have technologies and microphones, then you need to extract metals. The question is not do we have to do it. The question is how do we do it, and how do we do it in a way that we can all live with. And that's the important thing to communicate. Because I think we have now a focus on sustainability in many ways, both in, again, what we eat and how we behave and what we use, but also that actually translate into the metals and mineral sector. So there is much more attention on raw materials use than there was before. So I think the greatest barrier still is who has to take the responsibility. And as it's been in the past, it's been very much sort of a free-for-all, you can say, where the mining company decides and the manufacturing company, and that can be the company that makes bicycles, computers, airplanes, cars, whatever, they buy metal at some kind of fixed rate, and they have not worried about where the metal came from. And I think that that has been a really, really big barrier, and that is, I think, an important thing for us to change now, is to put some policies in place so that we force companies, and here especially I think about OEMs, so the original equipment manufacturers, so we force them to take responsibility, because if they start taking responsibility for the sourcing and also for the recycling, they actually take care of designing products so they can be recycled and take responsibility for that, then we will actually change the end consumer's behavior and everyone along the value chain, because the mining company, if they can only sell if they have fulfilled certain criteria for best practices, then they will do that. And they want to do that, actually. They would like to see much more guidelines in terms of what they should and should not be doing. So I think that is the barrier we have to overcome now. We tend to approach this from a regional or national level, which is also, of course, the theme of this conference here. But in reality, it's very, very global. And I think that is also important to keep in mind, that when companies buy metals they buy them off the shelf or whatever they cost, they don't necessarily pay attention to the fact that maybe it was a 9-year-old in Congo who mined this cobalt. We don't want to put Congo out of business, or Bolivia or anyone else. So it's also a global issue, that it is about empowering and enable the industry as such in doing the things in a better way and in a right way. And I think that there is a slight barrier there from moving from just straight up market value on metals to saying, but there's other things that have value. There are things like ethics, there are things like environment that we should also somehow price set and take into our consideration, and we should export that knowledge and those best practices. Exactly how we do that, I'm not sure. So I think that's another barrier that we must face. But it starting again with the end consumer and the middle consumer, the equipment manufacturer, snapping out of this illusion that it's environmentally much better if the mine is located somewhere else, because it's not. A mine in China, a mine in Bolivia, a mine in Congo is not going to be more sustainable or more environmentally responsible than a mine based in Spain or in Finland or in Germany. So we should stop thinking like that. I think yes and no. I think that there are certain sometimes fractions that are just very opposed to development, almost regardless of what kind of development it is. But I actually think that when we have the opportunity to have a real conversation about why, for instance, green technologies couldn't exist. We can't have a green transition. We can't have wind turbines. We can't have solar panels if we don't mine. And when you actually have that conversation with people, I don't actually find it to be so hard. I think the difficult thing is maybe generating the places for those conversations, to have enough projects where you bring in all different kinds of players, which is why this project, I think, in a way, have a great strength by engaging so strongly with the regions, because on a regional level, typically the regional decision makers are engaging with environmental groups on a local level. So there you can actually have the conversation. But I personally also think that it is very important that we have it also not just on a regional level, but really on a societal level, that the people living outside of mining regions, that they take responsibility for all of the things that they are using, because they are using a lot of raw materials.